In our headlines on this Thursday, December 26th, here in Seoul. The Constitutional Court is poised to proceed with its preparatory hearing tomorrow, despite uncertainty over the President's presence at the session, as he has yet to respond to calls for his attendance, as well as relevant documents. Meanwhile, 15 North Korean IT workers and one entity have been blacklisted by South Korea's Foreign Affairs Ministry for illicit cyber activities to fund the regime's nuclear weapons and missile programs. And according to Statistics Korea, more babies were born in October, up over 13% on year to a total 21,398, posting the highest annual rise in 14 years. We start with the latest on the impeachment trial. Now, members of the Constitutional Court held a meeting earlier today ahead of their preparatory hearing scheduled for tomorrow amid continued uncertainty over the president's attendance and his agenda. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Still no news from President Yoon on how he will challenge his impeachment at the Constitutional Court. On Thursday, Press Officer Lee Jin said the president has not submitted any materials or plans to present his case at the court's first preparatory hearing on Friday. The preparatory hearing is expected to kick off at 2 p.m., where two judges will gather materials and arguments from both Yoon and the National Assembly, which voted to remove him from office over his imposition of martial law on December 3rd. The judges will then outline the key issues or major grounds for impeachment, and a list of evidence and witnesses to be presented throughout the trial. Prior to the hearing, the National Assembly's Impeachment Committee submitted a plan and a list of evidence, witness applications, as well as a power of attorney. However, Yoon has been refusing to receive the court's official documents, requesting his response and preparation for the trial. He also has not yet submitted the requested proclamation of martial law and the minutes of the cabinet meeting that took place shortly before he declared martial law.
With no word from Yoon less than a day before the hearing, it's still unclear who will represent the president or whether his team will skip the session entirely. Some observers say it's possible the president himself could show up here on Friday. The Constitutional Court says it cannot reveal at this time whether security detail is being discussed or arranged for such a scenario.
Yoon's team so far has expressed the need for more preparation time, adding to concerns that the prosecutor-turned-president will lengthen the trial process with delaying tactics. As uncertainty lingers, all 6 judges at the Constitutional Court held a meeting Thursday morning.
The justices presented a report on the case's progress and response measures, and the full bench shared their awareness of the situation and response strategies.
The court did not disclose what measures they discussed, but maintained that Friday's hearing will go ahead as planned. Around 2 to 3 preparatory sessions are expected before the case proceeds to trial. Meanwhile, as partisan clashes continue over the authority of acting President Han Duck-soo to fill the 3 vacancies on the Constitutional Court bench, an official said the court secretary general and all 3 judicial candidates have stated that Han is able to appoint the judges. Currently, as 6 out of 9 judges are needed to uphold the impeachment, the current panel of 6 justices would have to vote unanimously in order to remove Yoon from office. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
At the National Assembly, the Parliament has adopted a motion aimed at filling the current vacancies at the Constitutional Court as it undertakes the impeachment trial against the president. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young joins me live on the line now. Ha-young, let's start with the adoption of that motion.
Sure, Sunny. During a plenary session on Thursday, the opposition-led National Assembly voted to give consent to the appointments of 3 constitutional justice nominees. And the appointments of Ma Heun-yuk and Chung Kae-sun were passed with 193 votes each in favor, while Cho Han-chang's appointment passed with 185 votes in favor among the 195 lawmakers present amid a ruling People Power Party boycott. And there have been strong objections from the PPP, which argues that the nominees, even if confirmed by the Assembly, cannot be appointed by an acting president who does not hold the same authority as a president. And right after the vote results were announced, Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik urged acting President Han Duck-soo to finalize the appointments. Take a listen.
Since the National Assembly has completed the process for appointing Constitutional Court justices, acting President Han Duck-soo should finalize the appointments without delay or debate.
Right, and prior to that parliamentary vote, Hayoung, I believe the acting president shared his reservations in a public address. Could you tell us more?
Right, Sunny. About 30 minutes before today's plenary session, acting President Han Duck-soo announced that he would delay appointing justices until rival parties agree on whether he has the authority to make such decisions. And Han emphasized that it is the consistent spirit of the Constitution and law that an acting president should focus on stabilizing the country during a crisis and avoid exercising key presidential powers, including appointments to constitutional institutions. Take a listen.
If exercising such powers is inevitable, it has always been customary in our constitutional history for the National Assembly to first reach a bipartisan agreement. Until the ruling and opposition parties submit an agreed-upon proposal, I will hold off on appointing Constitutional Court justices.
In response, the main opposition Democratic Party immediately introduced an impeachment motion against Han, aiming to put it up for an assembly vote as early as Friday. And the party had initially planned to submit the motion on Tuesday after Han refused to approve investigations into President Yoon and First Lady Kim Gon-hee. However, the plan was postponed, with the DP vowing to impeach Han unless the acting president approves the appointments of the judges.
Right, Hayoung, I suppose this fresh conflict has dampened prospects of a consultative body, including members from the rival political parties and the government today.
You're right, Sunny. Due to the ongoing confrontation, the launch of a joint consultative body comprising the rival political parties and the government to discuss current state affairs is facing a setback. The ruling and opposition parties initially agreed to establish the body and hold the first meeting on Thursday. However, a National Assembly official stated that the specifics of the joint talks have yet to be finalized. The DP stated that the appointment of Constitutional Court justices and the promulgation of the special prop bill must be completed before the consultative body can begin, while the PPP blames the main opposition for pushing for the impeachment of Han, despite him being a part of the consultative body. That's all I have for this hour. Sunny?
All right, Hayoung, thank you for that coverage. That was our political correspondent Shin Hayoung reporting live from the Parliament. Meanwhile, with regard to the charges of insurrection brought against the president, a second summons for questioning went unanswered on Christmas Day. Our Ian has the latest.
President Yoon failed to appear for questioning set for 10 a.m. on Wednesday, following a second summons by investigators. This is the second time Yoon has not responded to a summons by the Special Investigative Team, which includes members of the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. Despite waiting for the president beyond the initial deadline, the CIO now will consider whether to issue a third summons or seek an arrest warrant to forcibly secure his attendance, potentially on Thursday at the earliest. However, investigators have reportedly stated that the arrest of Yoon is still a long way off, as there are many factors still to be considered. President Yoon remained silent on the matter, as did one of his lawyers, Seok Dong-hyun, who has been acting as Yoon's unofficial spokesperson. On Tuesday, Seok stated that it was unlikely that the president would attend Wednesday's questioning. He emphasized that the Constitutional Court's impeachment trial should take priority and added that once Yoon's position is clearly communicated to both the justices and the public, the issue will be viewed more objectively and seriously by the people. The lawyer also said that the legal team will present a formal stance on some of the matters after Christmas Day. With the Constitutional Court scheduled to hold its first preparatory hearing this Friday, the CIO has also indicated that it will consider various factors in its approach. 이은희, Arirang News.
In a bid to better counter North Korea's hostile weapons ambitions, the government here has added over a dozen new names to its sanctions list. They include 15 North Korean IT workers and one entity for illicit cyber activities to fund the regime's nuclear weapons and missile programs. According to Seoul's foreign ministry earlier on this Thursday, the North Korean workers in question are believed to be engaged in crypto theft. Meanwhile, the entity that has been newly sanctioned is suspected of sending IT workers overseas to funnel their wages back into North Korea. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is widely expected to embark on a farewell trip to South Korea next month before the Biden administration's term comes to an end. Now, sources believe the trip will take place before January 20th, which marks the inauguration of a second Trump administration. Here in Seoul, Blinken is likely to sit down with Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol before flying into neighboring Japan. Now, earlier this week in Washington, speaking to members of the media, a senior South Korean official forecast a high-level meeting between the two countries in the near future. And Vice Foreign Ministers of South Korea and Japan met in Tokyo on Thursday and agreed to advance high-level interactions for the near future. First, Vice Foreign Minister Kim Hong-yoon reassured his Japanese counterpart Masataka Okano about the stability of state affairs within national borders amid the efforts of the acting president. The two sides also agreed to bolster trilateral cooperation with the U.S. against any North Korean provocation and its military coordination with Russia. In other news, Israeli assaults on Gaza continued on Thursday with at least 10 killed and over a dozen injured. Also back on Wednesday, that is Christmas Day, more than 20 people, including children, were killed. These latest attacks follow a halt in ceasefire negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas, with each party blaming the other for the break-in talks. Hamas claims Israel has sought to make new demands, while Israel asserts Hamas has refused to provide a complete list of the hostages it holds. Also in the international headlines, it was a tragedy for some and a miracle for others when an airplane from Azerbaijan headed for Russia crashed in Kazakhstan. Our Ising-jae reports.
An Azerbaijan Airlines flight carrying 67 passengers crashed in Kazakhstan on Wednesday, killing at least 38 people. However, miraculously, 29 people survived the crash, including 2 children. Flight J28243 had taken off from the Azerbaijani capital Baku en route to the Russian region of Chechnya when it crashed while attempting an emergency landing. Of the passengers, 37 were Azerbaijani, 6 were from Kazakhstan, while there were 3 from Kyrgyzstan and 16 from Russia. Officials say an investigation is underway to find out what caused the deadly crash, but for now, no information has been released.
Currently, the investigation process is ongoing in cooperation with the Prosecutor's Office of Kazakhstan. All versions are being explored in the criminal case. At this moment, we cannot provide any conclusions regarding the investigation.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed his condolences over the deadly crash. During the summit of the Commonwealth of Independent States in St. Petersburg, the Russian leader said Moscow would be helping by sending a medical team to Kazakhstan.
In agreement with the President of Kazakhstan, a Russian Emergencies Ministry plane with medical personnel and necessary additional equipment on board is flying to Aktau. Well, I repeat once again, let's hope for a speedy recovery of the injured ones, and of course, I am sure a thorough investigation will be carried out. We will coordinate the work of our special and aviation services on all issues related to this tragedy.
Moscow's aviation watchdog said that preliminary information suggests a bird strike had led to the pilot making the emergency landing. Ising-jae, Arirang News.
And back here in Korea, we have some favorable news on the demographic front. More babies were born in October on year, marking the highest annual rise in well over a decade. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
The number of births in South Korea rose by the highest rate for October in more than a decade, positive shift amid the country's demographic crisis. Data released by Statistics Korea on Thursday showed 21,398 births in October, up 13.4% compared to the previous year. It's the 4th consecutive month of on-year increase and also marks the largest on-year increase for the month of October since 2010. And the increase of 2,520 births compared to the previous year was also the largest since October 2012. This comes as the number of marriages rose 22.3% on year to more than 19,000. An official from Statistics Korea said the general increase in marriages was a major driver behind the increase in births.
We've continuously been pointing to the increase in marriages influencing the increase in number of births, as well as the growing population in their early 30s.
The number of marriages has shown a steady rise since April this year thanks to efforts from the Yoon administration to tackle the population crisis through childbirth and marriage benefits. October also saw the largest number of marriages for the month of October since 2019. The Statistics Korea official added that the number of births was especially prevalent in women in the early 30s, with people getting married later. But while deaths still exceeded births in October, the number of deaths fell slightly compared to the previous year, leading to a population decline of roughly 8,000. The agency also projected that if this upward trend continues in November and December, the country could see an annual increase in the number of births for the first time in 9 years. 이수진, Arirang News.
And it's now time to start filing your taxes as we wind down the year 2024. That being said, our Moon Hae-ryun walks us through some of the potential tax deductions for this year. Do take a listen.
As the year comes to a close and a new one approaches, taxpayers in South Korea are gearing up for year-end tax settlements, a crucial annual process that determines refunds and deductions while offering opportunities to maximize financial benefits. And this year, families, starting from newly married couples to those with children, stand to benefit. Couples who register their marriage between this year and 2026 will be eligible for a 500,000 Korean won tax deduction, which equates to roughly $342. This is something that taxpayers can redeem only once, regardless of whether it is a first or subsequent marriage. For families with children, all medical expenses for children aged 6 and under will be fully deductible. Postpartum care is also now included as a medical expense, with even high-income earners with a total salary exceeding 70 million Korean won able to include up to 2 million won in postpartum care expenses within their deductible medical expenses. Additionally, the new reform to the child tax credit means that families with 2 or more children between 8 and 20 years old will receive an additional 50,000 won deduction. Several changes address housing cost burdens for buyers and renters alike. The maximum income deduction for long-term mortgage loan interest has been increased to 20 million won, with the standard price threshold for eligibility raised from 500 million to 600 million won. Workers with a total salary of 80 million won or less can deduct 15% of their annual rent payments up to a limit of 10 million won. For those with a total salary of 55 million won or less, the deduction rate is even higher at 17%. And to encourage spending to boost domestic demand, an additional income deduction is available for increased credit card and cash receipt usage. If spending has increased by more than 5% compared to the previous year, 10% of the increased amount, up to a limit of 1 million won, can be deducted. These changes represent a significant shift in Korea's tax landscape, offering substantial support to families and workers across various financial situations. It is crucial for taxpayers to familiarize themselves with these new regulations to maximize their benefits during the upcoming year-end tax settlement. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Seoul Central Bank has shared intentions to further slash its benchmark interest rate early next year in light of internal and external risk factors. Our Song Yoo-jin explains.
South Korea's central bank has announced plans to further lower the benchmark interest rate next year in response to economic risks. It said the decision is driven by political uncertainty and changes in the trade environment, which have intensified the downward risks to the economy. This follows cuts of 25 basis points to the base rate in October and November. A further cut would mean it's the first time there have been 3 consecutive cuts since the global financial crisis 15 years ago. In its 2025 Monetary and Credit Policy Direction Report released on Wednesday, the bank stated that it will reduce the key interest rate while maintaining inflation stability, easing downward growth pressures, and carefully managing financial stability risks. In addition to sluggish domestic demand, slowing exports, and the impact of the insurrection shock, the Bank of Korea also pointed to other factors, including the U.S. Trump administration's tariff policies and excess supply from China, as contributing risks. The central bank has forecast growth of 1.9% for South Korea next year, but this could decline further due to political uncertainties and budget constraints. Regarding future rate cuts, the pace will take into account both domestic and external risks, as well as changes in inflation, growth, and financial stability. Officials also promised to implement additional measures to stabilize the foreign exchange market. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Pope Francis, in his annual Christmas address from the Vatican, spoke words of goodwill, calling for peace around the world. Speaking from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to thousands who gathered at the Vatican on Christmas Day, Pope Francis began his message with the hope of silencing the sound of arms in Ukraine.
Tacciano le armi nella martoriata Ucraina. Si abbia l'audacia di aprire la porta al negoziato e a gesti di dialogo e di incontro per arrivare a una pace giusta e duratura.
The 88-year-old Pope Francis, who has been leading the Vatican since 2013, also wished for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war, calling the humanitarian situation in Gaza extremely grave. He also called for an end to political, social and military conflicts in countries such as Lebanon, Colombia, Congo, Haiti, Mali, Mozambique, Niger, Nicaragua and Venezuela. He said that this Christmas marks the beginning of the Catholic Church's Jubilee year, adding that it should be a time for every individual and all peoples and nations to overcome divisions. Russia launched a major overnight attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure on Christmas Day. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in response, called the attack inhumane and that Russia had made a conscious choice. The Ukrainian Air Force said it had detected 184 drones and missiles, many of which they say were shot down. Russia's strikes, however, led to power cuts across Ukraine, including the capital Kyiv, which still didn't stop many Ukrainians from celebrating the religious holiday. Zelensky posted on social media on Wednesday that Putin deliberately chose Christmas for an attack, adding Russia will not break Ukraine and will not distort Christmas. Russia's defense ministry confirmed the attack, stating that it carried out a massive strike on energy infrastructure facilities in Ukraine, adding that the objective was achieved as all facilities were hit. Now, Ukraine's largest private energy company, DTEK, said the Christmas Day strike was the 13th major attack on the country's energy sector this year. Pakistani forces launched airstrikes in Afghanistan's eastern Paktika province on Tuesday, killing at least 46 people and injuring 6 others. According to the ruling Afghan Taliban, who vowed to retaliate against Pakistan, most of the casualties were women and children. Deputy spokesman for the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, Hamdullah Fitrat, added that Pakistan had bombarded 4 locations within Afghanistan. An anonymous Pakistani official who spoke to Reuters said that the attacks had targeted camps of the Pakistani Taliban Islamist militant group in Afghanistan, a group which killed 16 Pakistani soldiers in a major attack on Saturday. In Haiti, a gun attack at the reopening of the country's biggest public hospital in the capital Port-au-Prince on Tuesday has left at least 3 people dead. Witnesses say armed men opened fire on a group of journalists, police and medical staff who gathered for a government press conference. Now, according to AFP, 2 journalists and a police officer were killed in the attack. The attack on the State University of Haiti hospital, known locally as a general hospital, has been claimed by the Viv Ansam Gang Alliance, who said they did not authorize the reopening of the hospital, which they captured and destroyed in March this year. Now, the head of Haiti's Presidential Transitional Council, Leslie Voltaire, said this act will not remain without consequences. The Viv Ansam Gang Alliance violently controls much of Port-au-Prince despite the installation of a new transition government in April. Kim Xiang, Arirang News.
At 10 a.m. today, a cold wave warning was issued for the mountainous areas of northern and central Gangwon-do province. Cold wave advisories are also in place across Gangwon-do province, northeastern part of Gyeonggi-do province, northern part of Chungcheongbuk-do province, and northeastern part of Gyeongsangbuk-do province, excluding the east coast. Meanwhile, the morning temperature in Seoul will plummet to -7 degrees Celsius tomorrow. With frigid conditions, heavy snow is also expected mainly in Chungcheongnam-do province and the Jeollado province between tomorrow and Saturday. Tomorrow, most areas will start at below 0 degrees, Daejeon -5, Daegu and Gyeongju -4 degrees. Highs will move up to 1 degree in Seoul, Busan 7 degrees. This cold wave will take a short break from the beginning of next week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session.